Okay, welcome to this Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. We are opening now to receive any comments on our closed session items. Are there any people wishing to make public comment either? Well, there's no one here in the live audience. Is there anyone on the Zoom audience wishing to make a public comment? We'll wait until 4:01 just in case there is somebody, and then we will go to closed session. Okay, seeing none, we will recess to closed session.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, welcome to the Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees. We had a brief opening at 4 p.m. To receive any public comment for our closed session items. We have went to closed session. We will have sections in the agenda for people to make public comment, and I'll explain how the public comment will work at that time. And now we will do roll call.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez.
Here.
Student trustee Swaminathan. I think she's on her way. Trustee Nori. Trustee Koo.
Here.
Trustee Dubois.
Here.
Vice President Stevenson.
Here.
President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is approval of tonight's agenda. Does anybody have any changes they want to make to the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Actually, could we move approval of the consent agenda after, maybe like before the information item?
Is there?
So you're saying is you would like to do recognitions
Yeah, I think,
prior to consent?
yeah. There is some items that I'd want to discuss. I think it might be better to,
Okay, okay.
I see. So we could do the recognitions prior.
Yeah.
I have no objection. Do you have any? So what we will do is we will do the special recognition, the board with the comments from everything, including the public comments, and we'll do consent after public comment and before information item. That works for me. Any discussion about that change?
No discussion for me. Sorry.
Okay, motion to approve agenda as amended.
so moved.
A second?
Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Carrie. Carrie's online. Okay, so the agenda is approved with that revision. Report out on closed session. We have nothing to report from the closed session. Next is the consent agenda, which we have moved. So now we are at item 8, special recognitions.
Okay. Well, it is kind of nice to start with the best part of the meeting at the beginning. Maybe we should do this at the beginning. So the board and I would like to recognize East Palo Alto Academy sponsors, advisors, and student leaders from the Black Student Union Club, Polynesian Pacific Island Club, and our Latinx Student Union Club. So to give you all the much deserved recognition, I introduce your fabulous and one of my most favorite, don't get offended, Karen, I see you on and you are also one of my favorite principals, Amaka Guillaume.
I am so honored to bring to you the future. If you want a world full of people who just exude both love for themselves and others, but for others first, who exude love for their culture. Okay, I might get emotional. These kids are so awesome. I can't even begin to tell. If you ever are lack of a moment of joy or an understanding and why do we do this work or what is the purpose of school, you just need to pick any one of these beautiful humans out here, including their sponsors and their family, because they wouldn't be here if it were not for them. Spend even just 10 minutes with any of them, and you will know there is hope in this world. You know there is incredible opportunity, and there is just so much good. One thing that is very important to us that we learned, as many of us understand this concept of, oh gosh, I always forget the term that it's referred to when you go off to college and you feel like I don't belong, none of people look like me, imposter syndrome. We knew that so many of our students didn't persist through college because of imposter syndrome. So we talked about love. We call it bulldog love. And we say how fundamentally important it is that you have to love yourself, who you are and where you come from. Because when you sit among others and they look at you like, what are you doing here? Or you look at yourself and you're like, what am I doing here? But when you love of yourself deeply and profoundly, you know you belong, period. And then what's so beautiful about that, we know that, right? When you love yourself, you can love others. When you take care of yourself, put that mask of oxygen on first before your babies even, you can take care of others. And that's exactly what they do. Some of you have been so fortunate to join us in the celebration of Fiestas Patrias way back when. And then some of you came for the Black History Month celebration where we got some of the best cooks in the world, right? Sitting right here. Thank you. And then we have on May 26th, right? It's May 26th. Please come and join us for the true feeling of mana. The power of the islands will be strong at EPAA on that day, and you are all welcome to see it in action. And the most beautiful thing is that thanks to Anamatangi, Polynesian Voices, it's a very mixed group. So we are sharing the mana with others, and that's something that we are here to celebrate today. Because today it's about when you love yourself and you love where you come from, you have enough in abundance to help others. And so that's what these leaders represent, is that they take what they have and what they know and they share with others and make the whole thing better. And so they do that in the classroom as academic scholars. They do that on the court as scholar athletes, and they do it just in the world as human beings. And I just promise you, if you ever have a doubt, just shadow one of them for even 10 minutes and you'll see what good they do in this world. So without further ado, we are here to recognize, should I say the names now or when the certificates come out? Maybe I'll just do the names now so we can make it work, because there's quite a few of you all here. Our awesome Black Student Union faculty sponsor is Ms. Leah Williams, who's unfortunately not here with us today, but know that she's here in spirit. And she has her three leaders here today. Shawan CCC, James, and Miss Helen with her awesome auntie right here. Our Polynesian Pacific Island Club sponsor, Messiah Fonongaloa, is here with his awesome leaders, Miss Mele Tovo, Lepua Mahoney, Tamalisi Jocelyn Tui Pulotu, Anna Malia Loto Aniu. I see. Okay, we got some here. Good. Our Latino, Latina, Latinx Student Union faculty advisor. Come get your certificates. We got Bulldogs, daily situation we got to advertise. Oh, okay, we have some folks there. Mr. Royana Sansa Gonzalez, who makes it possible for incredible humans like Chris Lozano, who they did their exhibition of learning, by the way, 2 weeks early so that we could calibrate as a staff. So earlier today, Chris was presenting in front of the staff. Alejandra Herrera here in spirit, and Jose Carlos Carvajal also here in spirit. So thank you for taking this moment to honor such awesome, awesome human beings. Thank you.
For those of you viewing online, we're going to pause for just a moment where there's a lot of photos happening at the moment. So just a notice for those of you who are here to receive recognition tonight, you are welcome to stay as long or as short as you like. If you have other things that require your time, you're free to go. And if you'd like to stay, you're also welcome to stay. The next item on our agenda are Board of Trustees comments. I'll start with you, Shanice.
Why, thank you. I just, I'll wait a second. Bye, everyone. That was fun, Crystal. That was fun. Thank you. I wanted to let you all know that I met with our EDC and wanted to share that the school sites that they've been talking a lot about EDC, the committee, and then all the I know. Okay. Can y'all hear me now? And each site has its own EDC that kind of works on the uniqueness at that site and kind of work with their leadership there. And part of the feedback and theme that we were hearing is that the school sites that are most successful have dedicated compensated time to really work on EDC in partnership with their leadership and at the site. And then they wanted me to share that there's a tension between classified and certificated across district as it relates to EDC and how to get involved and what that is. And it doesn't sound like that's new to you. And it felt like it wasn't isolated, like it's this school or that site. And then one of the things that came up that I thought was really positive is that they're really thinking about how do you onboard people who are new to the district, to equity and diversity? How do we keep the continuity going while meeting people at their individual needs? And so they're thinking about differentiated PD and what that means and ideas to meet people where they're at on their EDC journey. I love that language because it's very respectful. And then thinking about how do we give people historical context around equity as it relates to this district, especially if you're onboarding or if you're a community member who doesn't know. And they were thinking about like videos and how can I share our historical context without leaning there, but really moving forward. And I think that will address some of the tension with as we get new leadership in different roles, whether it's coordinators or whatever, so that they understand kind of like the context in which some people are here. And I think there is probably those who have been here a very long time and very committed deeply to Sequoia. And then there are people who've just got here yesterday, right? Coming from other districts or just newly hired. So I wanted to share that with you all. The other thing is Crystal and I went to DTAG. We sure did. We had a good time. And very different model than our Thai community, which is okay. And so we were interested in how they think about, for example, one of the things I'm looking at because of the conversations around here is how is AP being done or not being done at some of our local private schools and charters and our public schools. And they're like, we don't do that. And I was like, wow, how did you guys get there? And it was like, well, we focus on these other skills and we see that our kids are still getting into the Ivy League schools and we just focus on some other skills. And so they have a different philosophy, which I think is interesting, and they own that philosophy. And so I think that doesn't mean we don't like our philosophy here. I'm just saying, just looking at a different, model. And I just think that's been interesting because I've been to KIP, I've been to DTech, I've been going to Summit. I will be going to Summit. I've been to Oxford Day and I've been to Eastside, not Eastside, what's that one called? Everest. Thank you. I knew it was an E word. So just kind of looking at what's happening in our community. And then the last thing is that I did a site visit to MA, and I just want to thank Carl for his time and just trying to understand from a non-parent perspective, now that I'm a graduate of that. Well, no, I'm not a graduate, but like my children are a graduate, but I feel like I graduated. But I'm just trying to see it from a different lens in a different place. And that was really, really helpful for me to hear from him. And it was just very welcoming and wanting to talk about his school. And I think that's important to hear the joys and the challenges and the things we can't see in a presentation, right? And then Rich and I met to do the handbook. We had a good time. Oh, we got it done. I'm looking at him like, confirm that we got this. We work well together. And then just wanted to share that I've been talking to teachers across the district, different ones who are really trying to focus on their own like journey as being a good teacher or a good classified staff or whatever that may be. And what's been coming up is like this deep care for our district, which has been like recharging for me. I can hear problems all day long, but like I want to hear the care, not just the complaints, right? And just share like their ideas around whether it's special ed or retaining some of their newer staff that have just shown up very powerfully, thinking like, oh, we have like this really good, I keep hearing this thread across the district that we have a good group of teachers who are new teachers this year. And then talking about equity. And so it just brings up more concerns for me and not concerns, but questions about how are we keeping the legacy of our staff? Because eventually people are going to retire. I know I'm going to retire one day, not today, but like eventually, and you have to have leadership behind you. And so, or you have to have that teacher behind you or that next succession. And so just been thinking a lot about that. And I actually had a teacher just share that like they didn't know if they were going to stay because of housing. They were able to find some. And I was like, wow, that's really hard. They said, we just come to the conclusion, I'll just have to live with my parents forever. And I was like, ooh, that's not fun, but because eventually you want to grow up. Right. And so So that's been like what's been on my mind is about how are we taking care of those individuals who are coming up the pipe to be able to stay in our lovely district, build the relationships, continue that relationship with our students, and contribute to the positive culture in our school. And so that's what's been on my mind. That's who I've been meeting with. It has actually been very refreshing. So thank you.
Oh yeah. So like Shawnee's, I've had the opportunity to have conversations with numerous people, including from, areas that I don't tend to go to. So I actually had a chance to talk to a bunch of teachers from Carlmont a couple of days ago. And I think that was really informative to kind of shape my perspective as to, how other schools approach some of the issues that, I care very deeply about. I've also had a chance to talk to a lot of parents and students recently about, some of their issues related to their experience, not specifically at MA or throughout the district, but also related to the transition between middle school and high school. I've been in contact with some of the trustees from some of our feeder districts who've shared some of the things that they're excited about and they're working on, and also, brainstorm some ideas for how we can improve the transition process across all of our feeder districts. But yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to start out by just saying, hope everyone had a relaxing spring break because we just jumped straight in and then you lose that vacation glow, you just jump straight in. But those breaks are really important so we can rejuvenate and have energy to make it through to the end of the school year. I did have a chance to speak with some teachers at Carlmont as well and get some input on how things are going. Before the spring break, I actually went to a parent ed night that was sponsored by Belmont Redwood Shores. And it was on strengthening families, a workshop for parenting adults. And there's actually a lot of good things that came out of there that transferred over to high school parents as well. But it basically was the Search Institute. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they came up with this developmental relationship framework. And the components of that framework are different actions you do are connecting with your kids in a different way. So there's like expressing care, challenging their growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. And so all of those are kind of in their online tools, and they've got a lot of free resources. So I can share that with the rest of the board if there's some interest. But the parents are a very important component to our education, students' educational success, and strong families are important as well. And then recently, the Chamber of San Mateo County hosted virtual State of the City events for Belmont, San Carlos, and Redwood City. And I had a chance to just join those because very accessible because it's virtual, and they recorded it and have the presentation, so I could share that with you all as well. But trying to bring it down to bullet points, Belmont, there's a lot of talk on housing development, San Carlos, biotech development, and Redwood City homeless. So it's all kind of related to the planning stuff, right? So a lot of activity going on out there. And I think it's important for us as a board to stay in the loop. I don't know if other cities are having State of the Cities, but I'd be very interested in seeing the State of the City if they're recorded. And I know that as school districts, potentially we could provide a state of our district as well, right? And that way everyone's in the loop with what we are all working on, and we find opportunities to synergize and collaborate. And with that, I'm looking forward to the progress seminar this weekend, because I think that's one of the major goals, right, is to start collaborating across organizations within the community. So that's it.
Thank you. Carrie, do you have comments?
Did you see my shake? Shake no.
I couldn't see you. Okay, very good.
No, thank you.
I will just comment that at the last meeting, I mentioned the Redwood City Together SV2 event that was then upcoming and is since happened. I was able to attend. A number of community groups were there. Redwood City Together and Silicon Valley too had a joint event, and there were a number of community organizations there. That was my main activity since the last time. As Amy mentioned, there was a spring break in there too. So it seems like it's been a long time, but there was a lot of vacation there too. Crystal, do you have comments?
I do have some comments. One of my comments is a cross between a comment and a little bit of a recognition for someone that I feel is very valuable to this district and is really in it for, like sometimes you'll hear me say, I play the long game. Well, she definitely has me beat, and that's Miss Bonnie Hanson. But on April 5th, a significant milestone for this district was reached in our Stanford Sequoia K-12 Research Collaborative. It's been 8 years that Ms. Hanson has been a part of this collaborative, along with various staff that moves through the district, superintendents. Of all of the partner districts, came to an agreement. So all of our feeders, along with our district, came to an agreement on the reclassification process for our multi-language learners. I cannot tell you how of a great effect that is going to have on our, yes, Janelle, is going to have on our ELs as they come into our district. The agreement is in process. We'll standardize what the EL classification represents. It will remove a measure that correlates to students not meeting graduation and reduce EL students being held to a higher standard for redesignation than their English-only peers. So again, this is huge, especially since we have several feeders. And this was supposed to be a 2-hour meeting. We were finished in 45 minutes. So you were talking about a lot of different opinions and the work that all of them have done. And I just want to thank you, Bonnie. I know you're on Zoom for your leadership through this. You have been the steadfast with this collaborative. So thank you. And my last recognition, I don't know, Sarver, if you were going to speak to this as well, but I was notified that John Violet passed away. He served as the chair of the Bond Oversight Committee for 8 years. I have had the pleasure to work with him for 4. And, but I really got to know him during the Measure W campaign, and he shared so much wisdom with me. He was so caring and willing to help as I went and gathered signatures and ran around trying to get things to the voting office. And he was just a person of service for all of the committees that he served, Belmont, and then also to our Sequoia community. So I did want to share that information. He is just a remarkable human being, and I'm so glad that we were able to experience him for the 8 years he had served with the district. So,
Crystal, are we sending his family anything? Okay.
Okay, next, there's student trustee comments.
I will go first. Good evening, everyone. Like everyone else has said, I hope you all had a good spring break. Mine was a little early, so I kind of got like a second one. I was off from practice. But today, honestly, I wanted to give some sincere space and recognition to the families in Nashville who lost loved ones, who lost children in the Covenant school shooting. Their names are and were Hallie Scruggs, age 9, Emily Deekhouse, age 9, William Kinney, age 9, Mike Hill, one of the school custodians, Cynthia Peak, a substitute teacher, and head of school, Catherine Kuntz. We recognized the shooting in our SAC meeting yesterday. And I feel like we were kind of left with a little bit of silence. Our students, our teachers, our entire country is being desensitized to the murder of children. Almost around this time last year, I was listening to Carlos standing in this room in my place, crying for the children murdered at Uvalde. And I feel like I kind of have no tears left for this. And I'm really hoping that we're all going to work towards some more, effort in the safety protocol policy. And it was reminding me of the words of Dr. Williams last semester, "Are the children well?" We continued our SAC meeting after that with brainstorming ideas. Well, how are we going to make ourselves feel more safe? How can we contribute to the community? And going through some drills the past week after the shooting at Kenyatta College, they were doing like multiple drills throughout the day, and I was kind of in different locations as that was happening. And so we all thought that it would maybe be helpful for our students to kind of practice an entire drill day where they're at lunch or they're in PE or, this and that. And that takes a lot of time, and it sucks to have to be prepared for the worst, but I really want to hope for the best. But I think that is something that we should really prioritize. And I know students and teachers are really feeling it and coming to school every day. But yeah, thank you.
Just real quick, do you have another announcement to make? Did you make a commitment somewhere?
Oh, I was hoping you weren't going to ask that. Well, I haven't committed yet, but I think it'll probably be this weekend. I will be committing to UC Berkeley, the College of Letters and Science. Not work at all? No? Oh.
Hello. Thumbs up. But I kind of want to continue on that somber note. Someone was telling me a story a little while ago about she went to Germany and she heard a car backfire and she had like an immediate response to that. And she started running because she was like, oh my God, is this? She didn't know what it was. But I thought that was so kind of heartbreaking to hear that was kind of ingrained in her, like, oh my gosh, I hear this, it could be, gunshots, I gotta run. So I mostly have questions rather than answers, but 2 parts. What assistance can we give to kids today to alleviate that kind of panic reaction on the day-to-day? But at the same time, do we want to do that? Because it's really scary and it's better to be prepared, right? But it's unfortunate. So I think there's definitely something to be done about mental preparedness as much as we can. How do we give students a space to ask their questions, to have their fears, and really just talk about what this all means and how to move forward and prepare yourself in the hopefully, like in a situation that hopefully never happens, but how to be prepared for that from a mental standpoint, as well as doing those drills and making sure you know where to go and what to do and all of that. And then also on the other side, is there a committee working on protecting students from school shootings? Is there a way we can kind of create one that works in conjunction with law enforcement or mental health professionals, the schools and everything like that, so we can work on what we can do at our level to best protect students? Is there more we can do? What can we do? But yeah, yeah.
And would you like to share your total rivals, but you're definitely rivals for another 2 years?
Yeah, I committed to USC, so that's where I'll be going. I'll be studying music, so very nice.
I have a question. I'm looking at Crystal. I'm sorry, Crystal. How can we respond to the safety issues that were brought up? Like, is that going to be in the weekly newsletter? I'm not for sure if that's Elizabeth's, Dr. Chacon's role. I apologize. Or like, how do we address that? Because it's come up several times in different ways.
So we do have, when we finished our student advisory meeting last night, there were some things I was going to check on. So I'll be working with Dr. Chacon, and then we'll make sure that we regroup with our student advisory council and then include information in the Friday update.
Okay, next we have comments from the SDTA.
Good evening. I'm going to confess, as Trustee Ku mentioned, to having a little bit of vacation brain still. I took my children to the Grand Canyon and resisted the urge to push them in. So I'm feeling very good. We all made it back in all of our regular pieces. SDTA is looking forward to this stretch drive. We've got professional development coming up next week. Then we hit the big May AP/IB testing month and everything that comes with that. I know sites are excited about the kind of news that our student trustees have just shared and are planning signing day events at those sites. And so I hope that those communities are going to be able to celebrate all of their students moving on to post-secondary education, career, all of their future endeavors that we are preparing them for. I'm celebrating the 32nd anniversary of committing to UC Santa Cruz. So we didn't say such things then. Nobody cared where you were going to college. So you're just going. It's an exciting time on campus. So there's all that energy going on. And we look forward in 2 weeks to starting our bargaining process at the negotiations table and having friendly conversations even after that. See ya.
Okay, next we have comments from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Chris, do you want to make a comment?
Sure. I wish I was as eloquent and fluid as Edith always is. Instead, I actually wrote my speech down. So I'll give you the spiel and we'll make this a little bit more formal on my end. I'm here on behalf of the union to convey our eagerness and optimism as we approach the upcoming negotiations for our contract. We are open to discussing Articles 4 through 14, which form the main body of the agreement, and are committed to engaging in good faith negotiations. While we are still finalizing our full proposals, we wanted to emphasize our willingness to work collaboratively with the district to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. The union is dedicated to advocating for our members while also recognizing the interests of the district. In conclusion, we look forward to a productive negotiation season with open minds and high hopes. Thank you for your continued support as we work towards a fair and equitable agreement that serves the best interests of both parties. So just to continue what I've been saying, as I've joined board meetings in the past, that we are really excited to negotiate with the district. I think we've got a really great team on our end, and we know that your guys' team has improved with regards to how we can have very productive conversations. And we expect this to go very smoothly this year. And we very much appreciate that. So we'll be seeing you guys at the table. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item we have is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Do we have
I
public
do
comments?
have 2 public comments in person.
Okay, for those who are unfamiliar with our meetings, our public comments, each for items not on the agenda, the board cannot reply or comment to the public comments about items not on the agenda, but the public is free to address the boards on items pertaining to board business, and each speaker gets 3 minutes. If you are commenting from the Zoom audience, you will see a timer on the screen. If you're in the live audience, you will see a timer, I think, on all of the screens in the room. And you have until the timer gets to 0 to make your comment. Laura, please lead us through the public comments.
Okay, first up, I have Abby Corman.
Hi, folks. Good evening. We're in the long stretch right now with 34 school days left until graduation and only 2 more board meetings during the academic calendar. With 2 more meetings left in the contract year for many of us, my public comment today is asking again for board presentations and or information on topics we've heard mentioned, but still have yet to hear very much information on. In reviewing my notes, it was last March that we had our last presentation about attendance, where our new SARB process was introduced. And we have not heard about it since at the district level, despite a fury of effort at each site and, to be honest, many unanswered questions. I know across the country that absenteeism is up after the pandemic, and I know we're working on new systems and that takes time. And every day a student misses school without getting outreach from direct staff is a loss of learning. And again, it's been a year since we have heard at the district level any attendance information. I'm hoping in May we do get to hear that. In October of this year, when the governance calendar was shared, I named in October that I was struck we didn't have attendance or mental health presentations slated until May. We've named as a district, this is a need of all of our students, and we're waiting for updates, even from folks who are on the ground, to know where are we at with our COVID fundings, particularly around mental health. What about our contract regarding a wellness center? Did we ever hear a report out about the last contract we made before signing the new one tonight that I'm not sure has been approved yet or not? How does this new position tonight relate or differ from the last contract that we made earlier this school year for wellness? In the consent agenda earlier this year, we also, the board passed funding for Gateway Community School for the 22-23 school year. And I know last year, the board and County Superintendent Nancy McGee spoke about a potential partnership. And I'm wondering where we're at with that, in particular, after I went to the conference, which I shared with you from CTA, where they shared there's $3 billion in California right now for community schools that I'd love our school to take advantage of. And lastly, I do have to say I was surprised the board did not share out from closed session tonight anything that was discussed regarding the superintendent evaluation, especially as this has been a recent point of contention. I'd hope moving forward, we're able to see the transparency you all named was going to be important. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Alan Sarver.
Good evening, Superintendent Leach, board, and staff. Everything I've heard so far this evening reminds me of how much I valued and enjoyed the time I spent in this room on this board, and continues to make me proud of this district. Great. I'm here to invite you all to the 19th Annual Celebrate the Music Festival. This is coming up about a week and a half, April 30th in Belmont in Twin Pines Park. It's presented by School Force, the Education Foundation for the Belmont Redwood Shores School District, to support music, science, libraries, and other critical programs in their district. There'll be 3 stages of music all day long, with heavy emphasis on student music, especially Carlmont High School. There will be elementary and middle school performances from the Belmont Redwood Shores School District, youth and adult musical and theater groups from our community. There will be 2 student-run jazz groups from Carlmont, Scott's Tape and Nathan's Fearless 5. The Carlmont Symphonic Band, Chorus, and the String Bonanza, the first large performance by a combined group of every string player in the Carlmont music program. And the day will culminate with the Battle of the Bands. The Carlmont Pep Band, basically everybody anywhere in the band program in Carlmont, has challenged UC Davis and the Stanford Marching Band to a battle, and they have agreed. So they will all be there and they will go at it musically. There will also be robotics demonstrations from 3 of our high schools, as well as 2 of the middle school programs in BRSSD. Not only will Carlmont Team 199 be there, Menlo Atherton Team 766 will be there, and Woodside Team 100, the Wildhats, who are at this very moment in Houston for the national championships of FIRST Robotics, having won the Silicon Valley regionals. There will also be about 100 volunteers from Carlmont student body helping keep the festival running smoothly throughout the day. We look forward to having many members of this body join us on stage to introduce and thank our performers, highlight the great work of Sequoia students in support of the community. Look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is our consent agenda, which we moved to be here. Do we have any public comment about any items on the consent agenda? Okay,
We have none, no.
seeing no hands raised, I'll ask if there are any board members interested in pulling any items from the consent agenda.
Oh yeah, I'd like to pull 7.10.
Okay, is there any other items any board member would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I wanted to pull, I'm not going to challenge any personnel recommendation, but just make a public comment around that. Okay.
Which number,
I'm
Shanice?
sorry, 7.6. I apologize. Yeah.
Okay, do any board members want to pull any items besides item 7.6 and 7.10? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding items 7.6 and 7.10?
I make that motion, sorry, not move, motion, except for 7.6, 7.10. Is that correct?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, a roll call vote.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
student trustee Swaminathan,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
okay. So it's our practice to act on the items that have been pulled immediately after approving the consent agenda. So we will start with 7.6, Shanice.
I wanted to note some of the, I don't know everybody in the district. That's so many staff. But I do recognize some names on people who are resigning. And I know I emailed you, Todd, regarding this, but I just wanted to say it publicly that I'm a little concerned about resignation of BIPOC staff. And I noted some on there that I knew personally just because of work I've done in the community. And so just I know that we're taking exit information, but my hope is that we're also taking race and language as we think about the reflections of our population. And I know it's going to fluctuate. We can't chain anybody down to stay with our district, but like I want to make sure that like we're also looking at the reflection of our district a little bit more. And I'm kind of sad one of the staff is not there. So I reached out to them, and I know it's a good move for them, but was kind of sad for our students that we lost a really good credentialed teacher. So just wanted to put that out there. That's all.
Okay, so since this item has been pulled, I'll ask if there's any public comment about the pulled consent item 7.6.
I've received no cards.
Okay, do we roll call individual items? Okay, so we're going to do a roll call vote on, Shanice, would you like to make a motion to approve 7.6?
I want to make a motion to approve 7.6 personnel recommendations.
Okay,
Second.
okay, roll call vote, please.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
trustee Swaminathan. Student trustee Swaminathan,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Next, we have item 7.10, topic which you pulled.
Yeah, so I can go first. So, I had some concerns with this item originally, and after talking to more teachers, I think my concern has only grown. So, a lot of times in this district, I think it can really feel that sometimes decisions are made in a way that makes people's lives harder. And I know that never is the case, and that there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes. But I think when there is a chance to really, make teachers feel bought into the work they do and into the curriculum they do, we should, take every chance to go at it. And I cannot vote yes on the item as it's currently phased, because I think the way we approve our textbook process is a little bit flawed. I think it's a wrong model to say that we should have a required textbook across the entire district and not let individual sites be able to have some flexibility, because I think when that happens, there isn't buy-in from certain sites, especially when one site feels very strongly that we should use a different textbook. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve them. In this case, especially, I think there is one site that would very strongly prefer to use the other book, Henrietta, and I think we should let them. I also think it's a better textbook in general. The problem I have with Fabric, after doing my own research online, is that a grand total of 0 colleges actually use it as their textbook. And because it's not considered at a college level, when I went online and looked up some reviews of it, I found that a lot of teachers raised concerns that it wasn't as rigorous, or it wasn't going into as depth as an AP or a college level textbook should be. And when we ask ourselves, what are the point of these AP courses? It is to introduce our students to what a college level rigor looks like. And I think having a really textbook that's important is so important in doing that. So, I do think there are some merits to Fabric, and I think if teachers want to use it, they should be able to use it. But I would like to amend this item to approve both the Fabric textbook and the Henrietta textbook, especially because there is a school site that so strongly wants to use it. And I think when we're spending $65,000 on these books, if a teacher isn't invested in using it, they're basically the equivalent of buying paperweight. So, I think it makes sense in this case to really push both to really approve both of these textbooks.
Can I ask a question of Bonnie about this book? Because when thank you for bringing that up, Sothic, and I think it's important that we always review curriculum when it comes. But when I was reading this, there was, because I look up every book too, when we approve, because I want to know what it is. And so I didn't bring up any concerns for me, except for what I noticed when I read the reviews was that there's a shift in the AP college course that they want and how history is taught, and that this book aligns with how they're shifting the course. And so I don't know if I'm reading that correctly, Ms. Hanson, but I wonder if you could speak to that.
What I'd like to do is take public comment and no, board comment, and then we'll do public comment, and then we'll have, if there's any, that's okay. But it's before you were asking Ed, Bonnie to take comments. I want to hear public comment before that, if any. It's okay. Do you have any further comment? Okay. Does any other board member have comments before we hear public comment? Okay. I see 2 hands in the Zoom audience. I don't know if we have any comment cards in the
No comment cards.
Okay, so we'll hear the public comments from, we have 3 now. So anybody in the Zoom audience wishing to comment about this item 7.10, approval of the new textbook proposal, Fabric of a Nation, a brief history with skills and sources. Please raise your Zoom hand now, or anyone in the live audience, please turn in a comment card now. Okay, let's hear the 3 comments.
Okay, first up is Jarrett Harrison.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. So I was looking to talk about the textbook adoption for AP US History. I am a social studies teacher at Carmont High School, and I have taught there for 22 years, and 20 of those years have been teaching AP US History in addition to other classes. I want to share the concerns of the board member regarding the rigor of the Fabric of a Nation book. When we were given the opportunity to review new books, this one, in my opinion, fell far short because, again, it wasn't very dense as far as content. The structure of the textbook is really, I think, troublesome because the font is really small, like the physical book is really small. Like I said, there's not much content. One of the benefits of it is that it's got a lot of writing structural skills, but there's not enough detail in the book to actually give the kids information to write those essays. And so we've been using Henrietta at Carmont since, I think, when the new test was adopted in 2015. I believe this book was originally written to match the content and structure of that test. So we got it, I believe, in 2016 or 2017. And the newer edition actually fixes some of the issues with the earlier edition. It's a better balance of content and skill-based instruction. It's got just as many supplements as the Fabric of a Nation. And again, just one of the emphases we're trying to work on at Carmont is, adhering to the FAIR Act, which talks about different identities and, LGBTQ plus issues and things like that. And none of the textbooks we looked at were particularly great with the FAIR Act, but of the ones we reviewed, the Fabric of Nation was probably the worst. For every sort of thing related to LGBTQ, whatever, they just lump it into the index as C, homosexual. And I don't know how many people actually still use that term. It seems like a really outdated term to me. Whereas the other book, at least in Henrietta, there's a little bit broader range of information, and it uses the current terminology. So I can't speak for my students, but I could see a student of mine looking in the index and being offended by that word because maybe they don't identify as homosexual, but LGBTQ is a little more inclusive. And like I said, it's about 850 pages, about 200 pages shorter than the Henrietta book. And again, having taught at Carmont for 20 years in the AP program, we have a lot of AP kids, a really diverse group of kids. And we have a pretty solid pass rate of around 80–85% consistently over the years, because I think we've worked together to build this textbook as a cornerstone of that so that the kids can embrace that. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Waller.
Hi, my name is Jason Waller, Carmont High School Social Studies Department Chair. I've worked with Harrison for quite a long time. I've been there for 19 years. I've been an AP teacher at Carmont since 2013. I've taught AP US since 2015. I want to corroborate many of the points that he made. The one thing that I really like about the Henrietta book is that we've used an older version of it since 2015. And again, we have served the needs of somewhere between 200 and 250 kids with that book on a per annual basis since 2015. The newer version of it, especially in the fall semester, corrects many of the initial unfortunate realities with the older version of the book. It does a better job than the book that we use right now. And while the Fabric book is definitely one that is approved by the College Board, I would argue that the rigor, the reading level, and the amount of content that it has simply doesn't give our students, at least at Carmont, the tools necessary to succeed either in the class or on the exam. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mrs. Bronstein.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Patricia Bronstein. I have been a teacher at Carlmont for 31 years. And I've been teaching, I taught AP European history for probably at least the last 10. And we are in our inception year after the conversion to AP World. I just heard some of my colleagues speak up about wanting a little more latitude to approve the Henrietta book. And I really appreciate that Trustee Nori brought this up. So it motivated me to want to speak to having a little more flexibility for different sites to be able to choose different textbooks and not to have to go with only one for the district. It has been a topic of frustration for many teachers. Even more so with the AP courses, everything we teach in the AP curriculum is aligned with the College Board curriculum and textbook approvals. So it does seem particularly frustrating when the district has made some decision or a previous board that we must all choose the same book. We would like to give that flexibility to our, sister schools to, if they feel like a certain book is better. But like, for example, with the AP World book, my colleagues and I felt for many of the reasons voiced earlier that there were other books more suitable. And as Trustee Nori, brought up, if we don't feel like we can relate to our textbook or teach effectively from it, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars for books that we don't feel invested in. So I know his move to pull this was speaking directly to that book, but I would like to just kind of second that if we could have more flexibility, we would like to have extra consideration for an alternative AP World book as well. And of course, one that is aligned with College Board selection and approval. So thank you for bringing that up. And I really urge you guys to have some further consideration before a blanket adoption for a mandatory book. And everything we do is on behalf of all the students. So we, are trying to do our best and have had a 85 to 90% pass rate, and would really like you to consider, the teacher feelings on this too. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment for item 7.10.
Okay. Looking to see who the internal staff member is supporting this item. I guess would Bonnie Hanson or Victoria Dye like to respond to any of the comments or provide any background or information for the board and for our consideration?
Sure, I'd be happy to respond. So the textbook adoption process that we go through is lengthy. It takes the duration of at least a semester, often longer. There are team representatives from each school in the district that are chosen by the sites. They create a chart of current courses, criteria, number of students. They review dates and meeting times. They come to consensus about criteria for textbook selection and what rubric to use. In this case, it's the AP College Board recommended books, of which the one before you this evening for consent is on that list as a book recommended by the AP College Board as a text for passing their test. They determine a process for deciding what publishers will come and present, and then they make a final decision as a group about who those publishers will be. This is all very much teacher-led. They then meet and hear from publishers. They use a rubric criteria to narrow down the choices of text to investigate. They decide how to pilot the materials. Then they pilot the materials with their common rubric to evaluate each text. They make sure that all teachers have access to the materials needed for the pilot. After the pilot concludes, they aggregate the data from the pilot. They share pilot data in qualitative and quantitative form. The original representatives do a forced choice vote on the materials, and it doesn't come before you for your consent until all of that has happened. So I think the first point that I want to make is that we are hearing from some folks tonight whose textbook of choice did not get picked, and that is frustrating. But I do want to be clear that this was an extended process that we've used in this district for many, many years. And the two other sites who were part of the process, who like Carlmont have very high AP pass rates, I'm going to suggest the high AP pass rates are because of the fantastic teachers at all our sites and not correlated to any one textbook on the College Board approved list. Both of those sites chose the text before you this evening. I don't know how we would know that a book is not taught at any college. There are 3,000 colleges in the United States of America. Each of those colleges has multiple professors who teach US history. Those professors change every semester, and many of those professors change the book they use at least once a year. So I believe that there's an article that stated that. I would suggest that it's difficult to confirm. I guess what I would say is that I really feel for the teachers who are frustrated with the choice of this book. I wish that every teacher in our district could choose their textbook every time around, as long as it was lined to Common Core, AP, a higher power that tells us that the book is teaching what needs to be in it, which is many books, what kids need to know. The reality is that there are many reasons that it's the lesser of two evils to go ahead and stay with the current way that we do business. One of those reasons, and my least favorite, is cost. We get better purchase prices for books when we buy them in bulk. That's the most minimal reason why I think it behooves us to stick with our policy or practice of asking all preps in the district to adopt the same book. To me, the most important reason why I recommend that we not veer from the course with this textbook or any other textbook where a site is not the majority of the group that wants the book, is how we support teachers once those materials are chosen. We have a teacher on special assignment full-time in 2 subject areas, and in all of our other subject areas, they are part-time. Every year, we get a slew of new teachers needing support for how to best deliver their curriculum and instruction to their students. If we've got different, it's already a lot, for instance, for a social studies TOSA to support all of the textbooks for all of the social studies classes we offer. If they are then supposed to support teachers in multiple textbooks because we're offering different ones at different sites, it makes it really difficult. And I would suggest that it is a lesser of two evils. People can supplement as much as they want from the textbook. But when we are talking about supporting people who haven't been teaching a subject area for over a decade, and how do we do that the best that we possibly can? It's when we're talking about common curriculum and we can focus then on the instruction. The last reason I would pose is movement. We do, although not a lot, we do definitely have movement between sites of students. So to have the same textbook at every site in the district, so that no matter where you're going to school in our district, at what point in the year, you're picking up the same book you put down at the last place, is also of value. So while I agree with and support what the Carlmont teachers who spoke tonight are saying about the value of people or sites getting to choose their own textbook, I'd put a lot of money. How's that for a professional term? I'd put a lot of money on the fact that if we start letting individual sites choose individual books, textbooks for the same course, in a couple of years, we're going to be in one of these board meetings and a board member is going to wonder, why do we have multiple textbooks for the same course across different sites in the district?
Yeah, so I just want to add a couple more things. So You know, what I'd say is the way I see this is as a student at MA, I can tell you firsthand what happens when teachers aren't invested in the textbooks that they use. It's simply that they never get used. So I really find it hard to believe that, you know, we might have a textbook that, yes, it would be great if every teacher's invested in it. But, you know, if we ask ourselves, we want to center our teachers and we want to give them autonomy to do so. I don't think it's that difficult of an ask for us to say we can have 2 textbooks if a site always wants it. I know that, you know, this isn't the first instance where one site has felt very strongly about using a separate book. We really want to empower our teachers, you know, show that they matter. I think we owe it to them to give them the flexibility to be able to make a call like that. I think, you know, I think there are some very valid concerns about the fabric book. And I think the point that I was trying to making about how no college uses is because it's not considered a college textbook. It's a textbook that was written as a high school textbook, while all the other textbooks were written as college textbooks specifically. So I feel like, you know, it's not that hard of a request to make to approve both books in order to do that. I mean, teachers already feel, you know, disenfranchised, and it kind of affects their morale and culture. And I really saw firsthand in high school what it was like when teachers aren't invested in the textbook, which is why I'd like to make a motion to approve both the Henrietta textbook and the fabric textbook.
Okay, any other board members have comments or questions? Amy, do you have a comment or a question?
I was just wondering, the stuff that trustee Stevenson brought up, were those addressed already? Or did you have additional? Because you had some questions beforehand, right?
Yeah. Bonnie, do you remember my questions? I was reading
I do remember your question, and I believe, stop me if I say it incorrectly, I believe you were pointing out the fact that the AP history course has actually changed a good deal in the last few years. And I think you were asking, does the textbook that was selected by the majority of the teachers on this textbook committee better align with the new AP criteria? Am I right?
Yes.
I don't know that it does.
Okay.
I would pose that any book on that list is an acceptable textbook to prepare our students for an AP exam.
Okay. And then the last question I have, and this is just, it's a technical question, Rich and Crystal. Trustee Nori is asking if we can recommend a book that's not even.
So I believe the answer to the question is our choices are to approve the textbook that's on the consent calendar or not. And if we were going to do, I think because the other members of the public haven't had a chance to comment on the alternate book that he proposed, I don't know that we can.
It's in the pilot program.
It's not in the agenda. It's not on.
Members of the public wouldn't have been able to come and comment
Yeah.
on the alternate book. So we would need to, we could not approve, I think our choices are approve or not approve. And if we don't approve, then we could request that something come back on the next agenda for approval. But I don't know that we can approve a book that wasn't on the agenda.
Exactly.
But I think it was a recommendation from the pilot. Like, I don't see how it's any different to say we can approve both.
But it's not on the agenda. That's why I was asked, it's not a question that we don't want to consider your vote, but if it's not on the agenda, then the issue is the public has the right to have a response, and that's not on the agenda. So what's on the agenda is Fabric of a Nation, and we vote on that recommendation first. The other thing that's my clarification. Tell me if I'm looking at you, Rich.
Well, it's also, that was my understanding. So like, do you have a different understanding?
I think it's Brown Act, right?
Yeah, I think it's
You have
Brown
to
Act.
Notice to the public.
Well, people amend motions all the time, right? By that logic, you wouldn't be able to amend any motion you make because it would be a violation of the Brown Act.
But this particular one, if it's a book that we're trying to put on the agenda, the public has the right to have comments on that agenda item. To me, that's a non-agenda item, which means we can't really have any comments about, but I can have comments about this one because this one is on the agenda.
Yes, as well as the standard practice of the district. So if we were to vote to approve both textbooks, the process that Bonnie said so fluently went through, we very well could be removing the opportunity for other teachers that had the different recommendation or feelings about the other book and how it could be problematic to have, because there is a lot to do if we're not, so by having this discussion, are we saying a school adopts? Or if we go on the argument on autonomy to the teacher, then that would mean that you actually could have multiple teachers at the same site teaching different books. So that is a much larger conversation around operations that would need to come back for discussion.
My last question I heard, I'm glad you said this, Ms. Hanson, you said that there also, because I love this term when I start learning about curriculum, but there are supplemental readings that people can do in addition. I'm trying to think like a teacher, and I'm not, that you have supplemental material, which means that, yes, you have this as your main, this is non-educator, main subject, but you can infuse the things that you really like. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the last thing I heard, information around language, which I'm all about good language. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, that there is concerns that the language doesn't fit the identity of some of our students now. And so how do we address that when books, I mean, we have books with the N-word, we have books with all kinds of stuff that's not necessarily welcoming. And so how do you address that as part of the curriculum? How do you address that as the facilitator in the classroom?
You want me to answer that, or you just
I'm sorry,
saying
Bonnie, I'm
that's-
looking at you on screen thinking you're looking back at me. Yes, Bonnie, can you please answer that?
I can't answer it in very short. I would pose that might be a different board information item. There's lots that we do to work on that, and lots more that we still need to do.
Thank you.
A question. I guess what is the summary from the pilot in terms of strengths and weaknesses of each of the textbooks and kind of the pros and cons, and why this fabric of a nation was chosen?
I've never been asked for that before, so I apologize. I don't have it with me tonight.
We could ask the teachers, they're still there.
I want to suggest that this is not so much about this particular textbook, but that it's about a process that if we change direction, which we can, it has much larger implications. My head's spinning right now, like, okay, well, who would be in charge of overseeing the textbook adoption at each site? And how would we make sure that it was aligned appropriately to the different Common Core? And how would we do a vote if it was on a site? And what if there was a tie because it was the same number of US, right? And then you multiply that by 4 sites. So I just want to caution that for me, and I know that there are other people who don't feel this way, this isn't about this textbook. This is about a process that keeps things as fair as possible and allows us to be as supportive as possible.
Barry,
So is this something we can discuss at a future agenda then? Because I think if we can't make a motion now, I think we should bring it back and discuss it more.
so I think there's 2 things. One is a yes or a no today on this book, and the no could mean come back later, either yes or no and come back later, I think are the options for this particular item. But I think fair game under a textbook adoption is the process of textbook adoption that if you have comments on it, I don't think we're not gonna change our textbook adoption policy right now, but we could certainly, if you have thoughts on it, I would think that'd be within the agenda item.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification on my question, I'm totally in support of being process driven, and I think there's a solid process in place. But given the concerns, it's just more informational that I want to understand what were the pros and cons of each, and if there are ways to make sure that during PD or any supplemental stuff, we can perhaps address some of the concerns, right?
Carrie, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say this conversation feels to me like we're really micromanaging our staff. We are not the educational leaders. I hate to disappoint the teachers that came to our meeting tonight. I hate it. And I understand your frustration. I know Bonnie Hanson said the same thing. We know you're frustrated, but we are not the educational leaders. We have to trust our professionals. And I want to do that. There is a process in place. There were a lot of people involved, and this is not the time to pick apart a process with our highly respected professionals. So I want to support this textbook recommendation.
So
Okay.
do we make an?
Well, I'd like to just say, a general philosophy I have is I think it should not be a lottery for students, what teacher they end up with at what school or what school they go to. I'd like it to be a consistent experience throughout all of the sites. And I agree with what Bonnie said and with you, Amy, that being process driven is a positive. And all the operational pluses of having consistency totally makes sense to me. It's also agreeing with you, Amy, it's somewhat tricky when the book that's being recommended, there's no one saying anything nice about it. And then there's a line of people talking about the book that's not being recommended, why that one should have been, and no one's saying anything good about the other one. I assume there's a whole long list of people who would talk about how wonderful the other book was, but none of them came tonight for whatever, they didn't know to come. So that puts us in a little bit of a tricky spot as a board, but I guess maybe a question, Brian, would be our assumption that had people known, there would have been a long list of people talking about how wonderful the other book is, and it would have been just two groups each saying about why each book was wonderful, but that there are a lot. We were talking about trusting the professionals. The only ones who spoke against. So guess kind of want your assurance that there's a long list of teachers who will say that Fabric of a Nation is the best book, and they just didn't know to come.
I mean, we had 3 teachers here tonight. I don't know how much longer a list of teachers we would have if it were on the agenda. But yes, the vote was won by the other sites. So I believe that there would be a longer line of teachers.
I think what gives me peace is supplemental material. And so there still is an autonomy to enrich your curriculum. I mean, the thing that I'm most excited about in classes is when I love how Bonnie says, and I say it at my own school, pens and crayons don't teach kids. Who teach kids is the adult in the classroom. And I really believe that. I believe that the adult in the classroom and the material supplements the teaching. And so there's teachers in the room, y'all tell me if I'm different, but I believe that the supplemental material, just like culture and identity, all books don't share, that really respects those kinds of things sometimes, but that's where supplemental material. And so I still feel like there's an option. I do want to trust the process because I am not a teacher. I question the things that I need to question and process. But I feel like for myself, I need to make a motion to approve this book and trust the supplemental piece of it and trust the professionals to enrich the curriculum with things that feel a little bit more comfortable to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the moment we have a motion to, which I think, would you want to amend your motion to make something that would be what we perceive to be a valid motion given the circumstances? A motion, I guess your motion would be to delay. Sorry, I'm not going live. We're sort of getting into procedures that are unusual for us to deal with competing motions. But I believe that we would act in reverse order of the motions, and that if Sophic were to make a motion either to decline or to take no action, so that we're coming back with a different motion next time. So it's really
Put it on next
agenda with the, so you're saying put on the next agenda with both books, and you're saying approve it now as is. So we have two competing motions. At the moment, neither has a second. And I think the process would be to see if either of those motions has a second, and then we'll have discussion before we vote.
Okay.
Does anybody want to second Shawnee's motion to approve item 7.10 as worded in the consent agenda?
I will second.
Okay, so we have a second in motion. Does anybody want to second Sophic's motion to delay to the next meeting? Okay. Discussion. Sophic, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I'll acknowledge I'm probably in the minority here, but I just want to say one thing, like, we can vote to do this, but what I really think we're doing is if we don't have teacher buy-in, like, I'm still kind of unclear, like, who the middle management who kind of like makes these like decisions that we're trusting our educators, because at least to me, trusting their educators would mean trusting the actual teachers who really want to use this new book. And I really cannot understand why there's a good reason here to say no to them, especially because I think that in a lot of times, if we wanted to make it work, we very well could. So that's just me. And I do very strongly feel from my own experience as a student that when there is no investment, we're spending $65,000 for 1/3 of the school to buy paperweights. But, I acknowledge that the rest of the board might feel differently.
I guess for me, Sophic, that what I'm hearing is a process, right? And if, I think one of the questions I had when I first came on board was, how does a curriculum become a curriculum? Like, how does the bill become a law? Tell me what the process is, right? And I think once I understood that Bonnie's not standing at, the bookstore picking books off the shelf of saying, these are our books, I understood that there was a process, and that process is collaborative with educators and students. And so for me, like, I'm always thinking about, like, how do I go back out and share with my community how curriculum becomes curriculum? I'm like, wow, that's a place where students can get engaged to help us make decisions about curriculum. And so to me, it's an engagement process. I also think as a system, we do need to be consistent. I agree with you that I shouldn't be getting one experience over here and another experience over here. We're one district. If we're in a basic and we're in general, general classes together, I shouldn't be going over here and getting pop sticks, and over here I'm getting lollipops. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I can be getting the same thing with supplemental material or activities that really liven up, because the learner in the classroom is different, right? And so what you may do may be very logical, and what I need is someone up there doing jumping jacks, right? Like, that doesn't mean that the curriculum isn't changed. It means the book stays the same, but the liveliness of that lesson changes. And so I think when I say trust the educator, what I'm saying is differentiation in the classroom. I'm thinking about multiple different learning styles that are in the classroom. And I think that's where the magic is for our teachers. So I just wanted to clarify myself for you, Sophic, of what I was thinking around this. And yet I understand, like, what is the process, and do we need to talk about the process? Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, I mean, I think the process right now is what it is. And if you're potentially not confident about that process, maybe we just as a board need to understand the process better, because you and I are new, right? So we're not as familiar with the process. I'm familiar with my previous district's process. But I do think that consistency of the textbooks is actually important, because it gets extremely inefficient if every classroom, even if they're teaching the exact same course, unless it's like an English class where there's a portfolio of books to choose from and you're trying to do leveled reading or something like that. That's a different story. But in terms of, a common textbook, it should be similar for the same class, right? Because otherwise professional development gets difficult, when you're trying to collaborate, then it becomes just within a site, there's not going to be any ability to do cross-site collaborations. And then when you're trying to measure progress, then there's a lot more caveats you need to throw into the measurements. That's probably not the right words, but you know what I'm talking about right there. It's going to be really hard, and you set a precedent with this that then changes expectations in the process. So this is actually a much bigger decision. If we make like the alternate proposal, then we'll actually have to pull in the entire process and say, are we then across the board allowing for all courses this type of flexibility? And then it just multiplies, right?
Student trustees have anything they'd like to say?
Yeah, this is it's especially interesting for both of us to kind of listen to and understand the process too. And I feel like from the student perspective, I'm not necessarily conflicted about this, but to the supplemental point, in my experience, I feel like, yes, supplementals have been like enriching. And there's been like primary sources and documents that are really hard to read, but there's still like a good source of historical accuracy. And I think that with any textbook, especially an AP textbook, it's going to be just so like voluminous, and there's going to be so much information. And it definitely depends on the teacher and kind of what they choose to highlight within that textbook. But yeah, I would say that consistency makes the most sense for me as a student. So that way, yeah, again, going to like say my peers who are in my same class, but in a different period, I can go and be like, hey, can I borrow your textbook? Just things like that. But also kind of being like, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me in this textbook. This doesn't, like, kind of pointing things out and collaborating with them, and then sort of kind of the district is growing and we're changing, and then we can take all of those textbooks and kind of replace them as the time changes. I don't know. I feel like if there's more flexibility with teachers, it would be kind of hard to detach them from whatever textbook they've like come to like, and then it's just this whole kind of, it's kind of like anarchy a little bit with like textbook wars. So I think supplementals is a really great way to go. But not every teacher makes time for that. So I think some policy on that could be interesting for students. So that way everyone has an opportunity to look at primary sources and diversify their perspective, even using the same textbook.
I kind of want to add onto that point about the supplemental materials. I think that's a great resource and a way for teachers to add their spin onto the materials that they are presenting to students. But I also think that it definitely depends. I know teachers who are not very interested in looking for new materials. They're very sticking to the book or the resources they've been given, and other teachers who are very excited to try new things and share all kinds of resources. So I definitely agree that some sort of way to make that more consistent, because we are talking kind of about consistency with the textbooks, might be a good way to go, or something to look at for the future. What materials are people going to use to expound on these topics that are introduced in the textbook? Are there ways that students can do research outside of school because they're interested in a topic that they've been introduced to? So I would say that's something for us to think about, but I would agree that a consistency is very important. So people are getting the same sort of information. But I do think the supplemental material side of things is a very interesting thing to look at because of how that's regulated or thought about by each teacher and their teaching style. So, yeah.
I just want to respond to something that Amy said and something that Sophic said. So Amy, at least in my time, I don't recall having a issue like this where we kind of dug deeply into the process for how textbooks came to us. So while you're 2 years later than me and joining the board, we didn't have where we kind of dug deeply into the process of it, where we had teachers who were opposed to an adoption come and speak in opposition. And this is kind of a first, at least for me on my time here. So we're equally as informed or not informed on that. And so I think you mentioned wanting, that there's a problem potentially for teachers to not be bought into the book that they have. And I think you use the term buying paperweights. That is, I mean, I guess if we're either going to have every person picking exactly what they want, having the problems the student trustees talked about with inconsistencies, or we're going to have some process, and almost always there will be somebody who disagrees with the process but has to go along with it. So I'm trusting that there were more people and that they had really good reasons that were on the side of selecting the book that is selected, that they represent a majority, and we're saying trust the experts, that there were experts involved in this process that came to this decision. So I'm comfortable supporting Shawnee's motion for that reason. Is there any further discussion, or are we ready to call for a vote? If anyone has any further discussion. Okay, so we're calling for a roll call vote on Shawnee's motion with second to approve item 7.10 as written.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez,
Yes.
student trustee Swaminathan,
No.
trustee Nori,
No.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes.
Motion passes with 4 yeas and 1 nay.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Safi.
yeah, thank you. I think this would be a good time to take a few-minute break. So we'll come back at 7:50 Apple time. Okay, welcome back, everybody. The next item on our agenda is item 13.1, presentation of American Federation of State County Municipal Employees, AFSCME Local 829 Office, Technical and Paraprofessional Bargaining Unit, and Maintenance and Operations Bargaining Unit, initial bargaining proposal to Sequoia Union High School District.
All right, well, good evening, Superintendent Leach, Board President again, and the rest of the board. I know Chris Poister came or spoke earlier during the Ask Me comment period, which he basically covered this, but since we're in the informational section, what I'll do is just read what Ask Me had set up for us, and that was provided in proposal. That way we can put this forward as the Sunshine or initial agreement for Ask Me. So Ask Me, SUHSD chapter negotiating team and Ask Me business agents submit the following Sunshine proposal to negotiate a successor collective bargaining agreement with Sequoia Union High School District. We look forward to working collaboratively with the SUHSD negotiating team to problem solve and have positive resolutions. We strive to continue to build trust and positive relationships while affording the Ask Me representative staff to support and representation needed to achieve the best standards, working conditions, and services provided to the students, staff, in our community. The Ask Me / SUHSD collective bargaining agreement is open for bargaining. We will negotiate on the following articles. Article 4, hours of employment. Article 5, transfers. Article 6, health and welfare. Article 7, leaves. Article 8, evaluation procedures. Article 9, safety. Article 10, grievance procedures. Article 11, discipline procedures. Article 12, layoffs. Article 13, wages. Article 14, holidays and vacations. Article 17, completion of agreement. Article 19, terms of agreement and class specifications, and also including the appendix and reference section as needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for bringing forth that information item. The next item is a review of our Title III evaluation.
Good evening, everyone. We haven't had enough time together this evening. I want to take this opportunity to pass on the very kind thanks that Superintendent Leach gave me at the start of the meeting for the agreement with our partner districts for our matching criteria for redesignation of students that I think is going to be a huge boon for our kids. To Janelle Bugarini, our coordinator of English learners and literacy, and Diana Wilmot, our director of program evaluation and research, as well as Victoria Dye. I was definitely the person on the committee the longest, but we got a lot more productive when they joined the team. So they're here tonight to tell you about the Title III evaluation, but that is in part just a guise to also let you know a little bit about what's been going on in the English Learner Program. As you are aware, our greatest area for growth amongst the largest number of students is with our English learner population, in particular, our long-term English learners. And I'm going to hand the mic over to them, and we welcome your questions and comments at the end.
Good evening, Superintendent Leach, President Ginn, Board of Trustees. We're here tonight to present to you the Title III evaluation, which sits in a federal program monitoring process that happens annually. We are not under review this year for this FPM, thankfully, but it tends to happen about every other year in terms of the review, and we still want to be in compliance and reporting out where we are with Title III. Oh, okay. So the specifications for a Title III evaluation are specific to the legal requirements to report out what Title III funds are, which is federal monies that come through the state to us in support of our English learners. And what we will lay out for you is listed A through G, A through F being pretty specific, and G being kind of open box, whatever you believe are analytical findings on the effectiveness of the Title III funded programs. And we can, have flexibility there. We've chosen to use our dashboard in that realm, but I will walk through the first set of slides, then Janelle will come in and share some more, and we're going to flip back and forth a little bit on this presentation so that you can hear different voices. So the next one, it just explains what we use our funds for. Our Title III funds are used to support the expenditures of our bilingual resource teachers, of which we have at all of our larger sites as well as our smaller sites. The Title III funds are predominantly used to support these teachers. We've also used some of our Title III immigrant funding from the state to partially support the newcomer center position that we've had for the last 2 years with Lily Quinones leading that effort. And we've also supported a supplemental curriculum called Brain Pop for English language learners using some of the immigrant funding. That's what it's called, Title III immigrant versus Title III Part A. So one of the first indicators is identifying the number and percentage of English learners, which we are referring to as ELs, making progress towards attaining English language proficiency, including our ELs with a disability. We did provide a cheat sheet around here, which we can also add, but it's all the acronyms. I was just gonna hold it up. Okay, yeah, looks like this. So hopefully those of you in the room, as we go through it, can use these as your reference. This is also something we gave to every site when we went around in the fall and presented on the EL data. So it's nice card stock. You can put it up on your wall and have reference to it, so that when you hear people talking about these demographics and tests and everything, that you have something to refer to. So this is on the California dashboard, and it refers to English learners making progress towards attaining English language proficiency. This is on the LPAC, which is the English Language Proficiency Assessment in California. It is something that every EL student takes every single year that they are designated as an English learner. Unlike, say, the CASP, which is just 11th grade when you're a junior. This is for every single student, and we look at the California dashboard, which specifies, did students go up a level from prior year? Did they maintain a level, or did they drop a level? And this particular dashboard shows that 43% of our students, 43.7% of them, have gone up a level. This is lower than the state average, and which is why the indicator shows that we are low here. And this is based on 697 students, which is pretty low number of students. And the reason why it's low is because this is the year it's looking at 21-22 and 2021. It's looking at the change from those 2 years, and those 2 years included a pandemic. And so the number is low. We usually have about 1,200 EL students that are tested. And this is the students who have 2 years in a row of testing. Obviously, with seniors being out of the picture, the number's lower than it would typically be. We'll see next year when you see this report again. Here we broke it down by grade level to get a sense of how our freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors are doing in terms of their performance on the LPAC. You could see that our freshmen at a level 4, of which 17%, we focus on level 4 because that's what you need to get reclassified. That's one of the criteria you need to get reclassified. So you could see 48 freshmen, 45 sophomores, 31 juniors, 28 seniors, a total of 152 English learners on last year's LPAC were a level 4. That means 152 students, well, minus the seniors because they're gone, but those students would be up for reclassification this year if they met the other criteria, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that's our areas. We're trying to move students up into those levels and get them to a level 4. It typically does take students 5 to 6 years to acquire English language. With their native language is, they're not strong in their native language, it may take even longer. But we look at this and try to identify the students who are ready for reclassification. We also looked at the students who are ELSWD, meaning EL students with disability. These are students who are dually classified. You can see these numbers being a little bit smaller than we had on the prior slide. So instead of 1,080 in the all category, we're looking at 294. So that means about a third of our students who are ELs are also dually classified. And you can see the numbers are slightly lower in terms of reaching level 4. We've been working really hard this year in trying to coordinate with our special ed staff and identify students' accommodations and ensure that they have the right assessments provided for them in the LPAC, working and doing training with our case managers as well. And Bonnie's also set up our trainings throughout this year where we focus specifically on our LTEL and our dually classified, engaging in conversations to figure out how we can best support our students.
Hey everyone, I'll take you through the next few slides. On this slide, you can see that this graph represents the reclassification numbers over the last 4 years. Our district in 2018-19 reclassified 31 students. And over the years, we have made some slight progress with a slight decrease in 2021, probably due to our pandemic, but we've made a little bit of a increase from 31 students in 2018-19 to 86 students in the 21-22 school year. This next slide here also represents, hold on. Thank you. This slide here also represents the reclassification numbers, but includes percentages and makes a comparison with the district and state percentages. over the last few years. We're still waiting, if you see the 21-22 school year, we're waiting for the data to be released for the county and the state. And Diana calculated our numbers locally, so we were able to follow up with the information that we needed. While we were increasing our reclassification rate, you can see also that the state and county rates declined a bit. And the percentage of students reclassified increased, and it's more aligned with the county rates, giving us it's aligning a little bit more with the state and county, giving us an indication that the work we're doing to support and monitor the progress of our English language learners is making a difference. You can also see that despite the pandemic, we didn't have as many students in those years, but we're still able to make a significant gain with the reclassification numbers. I'm gonna get it. There we go. Oh, no, wrong way. I think we went one too far, maybe. Nope. There we go. As we mentioned earlier, we do spend a lot of time thinking about reclassification, and it has really been front and center in our work with the San Mateo County Office of Education Reclassification Collaborative with their feeder districts, and also with the researchers who are part of the Stanford Sequoia Collaborative. We really talk to them a lot. They've done some research, they interview our sites, and with the work that they've done in our conversations and all the dialogue that's happened with their with their partner districts, we've made changes to the reclassification criteria. Our bilingual resource teachers also reviewed the document and provided us with feedback in terms of making changes and increasing the 2 additional options to the local criteria that you can see highlighted in blue. The state, and just to give you a little bit of background, the state provides guidance to the 4 criterion for reclassification to be considered for students to be redesignated as RFEP, reclassified as fluent English proficient. First, students need to have a 4 on the LPAC. That's the LPAC summative assessment that they take every spring. A teacher evaluation needs to be completed, and a parent also needs to be part of a conversation and consultation about the reclassification and their students meeting those criteria. Criteria 4 established locally at each district. So that is the basic skills section that you see at the bottom part, and that's where we added 2 additional criteria to be considered for reclassification of our students. So initially, a few years back, we used to use the GMRT. We then aligned the GMRT, the levels of the GMRT assessment the 9th and 10th graders would take across the district to our reading inventory. After the pandemic, that was a paper and pencil test, and it was really outdated. So then we moved over to the reading inventory and converted that exam to the Lexiles that you see here by grade level. But in addition, and through our conversation, we then added we've added this year, and really started in the spring, just this year, we've just made some agreements and have approved this new criteria that adds now the C or better in grade level English that is approved as a requirement for the A through G. And so students are meeting a C or better at the semester. That also qualifies as a criteria for reclassification of the basic skills of that criteria 4. And in addition, we also have included for the 10th and 11th grade, the college readiness benchmark of the PSAT to also meet that criteria. So students always need to have a 4 LPAC score, the teacher evaluation, the parent consultation, and then one of the options, the Lexile or C or better or the PSAT, really highlighting this changes really lays out a procedure to increase the possibility of our students reclassifying, but also sometimes we don't have to take them out to take the LPAC summative and then take them out to take a reading inventory out of class and really miss a lot of classes. If students are already meeting that C or better, that might be an option also for that reclassification. In addition, as we mentioned earlier, we've increased our coordination with our feeder districts around sharing information data and also aligning our reclassification practices. We've got, like I said before, gotten the feedback from our Stanford Collaborative. We've worked with the County Office of Ed. We've worked with our BRTs and really have a lot of feedback in terms of how do we then increase this reclassification and enhance our our process to help more students reclassify.
Just a quick clarifying question on that slide. It says or 3 at the top, the very first one says LPAC for or 3.
Oh, 3 for the, sorry, yeah, I should have highlighted that. 3 for the, thank you for asking. 3 for the alternate LPAC. The alternate LPAC is a new assessment that this is the first full year of implementation of the alternate LPAC. And that's for students who might be in the, what's the appropriate language? Moderate to significant, so students that are in our life skill, in the ILS program, and TRACE program will have to then take the alternate LPAC instead of the summative LPAC that our students take at their sites. Yeah, it's a little bit more hands-on, one-on-one assessment, and there's some of the similar sections, but it really requires for the person who works with the students to give them the assessment. And we're working with our program, the ILS program here, to ensure that our students get the alternate LPAC rather than the summative LPAC that they've had to take in years past. Yeah. And this last slide here for now that I will talk to you about talks about our, sorry, I just lost myself in my notes. This slide shows the number of percentage of students reclassified that are meeting state grade level content standards based on the 11th grade SBAC from the spring of 2022. So we measure our the students who are reclassified are FEP, reclassified fluent English proficient, and track their progress. The 11th grade is the only time that they take one of the state tests. And so this is the one measurement that we're using to highlight their progress in meeting grade level standards for both the ELA and their math test. And also you've seen a little bit, you can see a little bit of improvement throughout the years.
So as we continue on in the Title III evaluation, you can see we're at letter F, which is the number and percentage of LTEL students. So LTEL stands for long-term English learner, and it represents students who are here more than 5 years, so 6 or more years. Typically, these students have been enrolled since 10 years, maybe in kindergarten. It represents more than half of our EL population. There's another 100 or so that are in the yellow and orange that are at risk of becoming LTELs. So really we're looking at 65% or 2/3 of our EL population are long-term English learners. And I want to make the point that Janelle said earlier, half of them, more than half of them are also enrolled in grade level English, which is why we wanted to put in the criteria. If you're enrolled in a A through G approved English grade level course and you pass it and you get credit for UC CSU system, that should count towards reclassification, trying to remove the barriers for these students so that they can get over the hump and be reclassified, knowing how the system has over the years been challenging to get through the hurdles of reclassification. The 1/3 of students in the green and the red represent our newcomers that have been here from 0 to 3 years, that we work with the Newcomer Center that we mentioned earlier, that are in our ELD program, that are learning English language development in kind of sheltered, more specific classes for English. And then they also participate in other core courses as well. But it just gives you a sense of what our EL population is made up of. And also wanted to bring in here our RFEP students. Our RFEP students are reclassified fluent English proficient. That means that they've been over the hump. They were once identified as an EL student through a test when they first got here because they answered on the home language survey that they spoke a language other than English at home. And they were reclassified. There are 2 types of reclassified students listed here, one in blue, one in orange. The blue are RFEP monitored, which means that they are
for the first 4 years after they're reclassified, they're monitored. We have about 500 of those students who are monitored in years 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then another, I think it was 1,700 students who are fully exited from being RFEP'd. So they came here to our district already RFEP'd. So that's 2,200 students combined that are RFEP'd, either exited or monitored, and then 14% are ELs. And then we have an IFEP group, which it means they're initially fluent, which means, again, they filled out a home language survey saying that they spoke a language other than English at home. They took the test when they got here and they passed it with flying colors, and they're considered to be IFEP. That's 7% of the population. And everybody else, 53%, did not say they spoke a language other than English at home and are considered to be English only. So from the time they walked in to a California public school on that first day, they're considered to be English only. Now I put that in quotes because we know our kids speak other languages and native languages, but that is how it's designated at the state level, that they did not fill out a home language survey that said they spoke a language other than English at home. So moving on. This gets to the analytical findings part. And I said we have flexibility here in terms of how we want to analyze. So what I did is I pulled the data off of our current local dashboard and tried to visualize it for you here. I broke it down by short term, which basically includes at 0 to 5, long term, the greater than 6 years, greater than or equal to 6 years, and then RFEP. They're combined in this particular case between monitored and not monitored, they're just combined. And then IFEP, which are those initially fluent, and then EO. So what you could see in the very first slide is period attendance. So this is last year's full year data, 21, 22, 2021, 19, 20, 2018, 19. We do this once a year. In the fall, we report on last year's period attendance, which means the amount of time students went to class. And 2021, you could see, is kind of a bleaker year for our short-term and long-term English learners, or less than 75% attendance. But on other given years, they're pretty consistent with the other students in terms of their attendance. There's definitely still a gap here, and in terms of not getting 100% attendance, but this is not daily attendance. This is just period attendance, which means that if they miss one class, it's counted against them, right? So if they're absent for even one period, that's being considered here. It means that they, in order to get daily attendance, that means they have to be out all day. Right. So that we tend to focus, like the state does daily attendance. We focus on period attendance because we're a high school district and attending every class is important. Generally, I'm seeing pretty similar attendance patterns. And I think when we talked about this during the pandemic, what we found was the correlation between attendance and grades was not that high. Right? We saw a lot of outliers in terms of kids who were attending all the time and getting low grades, and kids attending not a lot and getting high grades. And it was sort of all over the map. I mean, there was a general trend. The greater you come to school, the more likely you are to succeed. That one would expect that, but it wasn't so clearly defined, in a regression analysis, that attendance was a huge predictor of performance. And I show this slide because what you're about to see is the performance of these students looks very different, and attendance isn't necessarily the reason. 9th grade, these students come to us already off track. Our short-term English learners and our long-term English learners are at the end of 9th grade already 50% behind the 8 ball. I included our RFEP students in here, which are much closer to our IFEP and our EOs. And And you'll see as we get through these graphs that the pattern holds true every year until maybe like graduation. There's like a big push for credit recovery, and like, our RFEP students that are long-term English learners tend to catch up a little bit more. Our short-term students, English learners, do not as much. So this is following essentially the 9th grade. I mean, you could look at the class of 2025 if you want, or the class of 2022. We're going to see them 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and what happened. So here, let's do that. Class of 22. Here they are in 10th grade, and they're still less than 50% on track to graduate. Our RFEPs are creeping up towards 75%. Our IFEP and EO students are here in the 85 to 90% categories. And it looks similar each year. So it's not like one particular cohort is different than another. This is junior year. This is when you really start to see the RFEPs are all getting up to 75%, but there's still this 50% threshold. Half of the short-term and long-term English learners are still not on track to graduate at the end of 11th grade. This is actually graduating. And interestingly, this is the 4-year cohort graduation rate. That means that they started with us, they stayed with us for 4 years. So it doesn't include the kids who started as a sophomore or started as a junior or came to us, and it's only the kids who started with us and walked across the stage from beginning of freshman year until the last day of graduation. That's considered to be the 4-year cohort. So interestingly, I mean, the short-term English learners, that means they were newcomers when they walked in the door in August, right? And they were with us all 4 years. We already know it's a challenge coming with credits or potential, learning English as a second language for 4 years. We just said it's very difficult to acquire English in 4 years if they're starting in ELD 1. So it's not entirely a surprise to look at the blue bars and see, but this is what's happened in terms of these students making it across the stage for graduation. Our long-term English learners in the red picked up a little bit of, ground in 2019. Here's the class of 22. There's those LTELs, they got up to 75%. Remember, they were at 50% before. So they made up some serious ground last year and graduated. Now we also, they lived through the pandemic. There were changes in policies. And so it's interesting to consider this group of students and what helped them support them and graduate. Our RFEP students, you can see, are nearly identical to our IFEP students and our EO students in terms of graduating. We also look at A through G. So half of our RFEP students meet A through G compared with 3/4 of our IFEP and EO students. And our EL short-term and long-term barely hit the 20% mark. This is for students taking AP and IB classes. Again, we have 3/4 of our or more of our IFEP and EO students taking at least one AP or IB class. And our RFEP students are down in the a little more than 50% consistently. And basically the findings are RFEP students come in more prepared for 9th grade than our LTEL students. Both LTEL and RFEP students seem to lose ground in sophomore year, but rebound by 11th grade and catch up credits in order to graduate. We certainly saw that in 2022. I hope we can continue to see that. I'm not sure if the historical trend will stay there. RFEP students graduated at a much higher rate than our LTEL students, which is why we've been sharing this data with our feeder districts and with our sites about how important it is to reclassify our students before they get here. The fact that they're hitting the ground freshman year with a 50% chance of graduating when they're in LTEL is we're just driving the point home that if we can get these students reclassified
There is something to be said about the psychological trauma of having to take that test over and over and over again for 12 years. I don't want to do it. I don't want, the kids don't want to do it. And we've seen in the data that there are kids who pass that test early on and they just don't reclassify because of the barriers and bureaucracies that are involved. Because it's a process. There's other criteria and, I think that we are working on it. We've also encouraged our own staff to set goals around reclassification. And that's why when we showed you that graph where we hit 86 RFEP reclassified last year, we're proud of that because we grew and we worked on it and we're setting goals around it and we're putting it in our LCAP as a metric to keep following and to improve on. We'd like to see more EL students graduate. We'd like to see more RFEP students meet A through G. We do recognize that RFEP students are meeting A through G at a much higher rate than LTEL students, but they do not reach the same rates as the rest of the population, our EO and IFEP students. So we would like to see the RFEP students have that parity.
You might ask what are we doing in the ground to really handle, really talk about and really deal with some of the, and continue to improve the instructional practices and what's going on in the classrooms. These are some PD initiatives for this school year. This school year, I've worked directly with our new instructional coach for integrated ELD to reinvent a constructing meaning institute for teachers of newcomer English learners. So constructing meaning is a practice that institute that we've implemented for several years now. Many of our teachers have completed it. Used to be a 5-day institute, is now a 4-day institute, but we still call it a constructing meaning institute for our, because we have that sort of established practices in model to do with our teachers. But we've took a Kalonge, who used to be a world language teacher at MA, who's our new instructional coach. Our science instructional coach and myself went and did informal observations after we sent out a flyer for our newcomer providers, the teachers who are working with the LEP sections, limited English proficient, that we want to move and change to label as English as EML, emerging multilingual courses instead of limited English proficient. We'll work on that. We'll come and talk to you about that. But we're working with our ELD teachers for all 3 levels and the content area teachers to really support them on the needs of what are the needs that they're seeing in the classroom for all 3 levels. For example, in a content area class like US history or math or science, teachers will have like ELD 1, 2, and 3 levels within one course. So as we observed, we really got feedback from the teachers. We were looking at what was happening in the class and how do we better support them in teaching all 3 levels of students in one section, right? And so we really designed this new CM Institute to provide the specific supports our teachers were really struggling with and needed a little bit of instructional area support with using constructing meaning and also like the sister program systematic ELD and we designed and reinvented a new institute to really address those specific needs of our teachers. In addition, we've also continued to work after we've done the adoption for the ELD 1, 2, and 3, continue to do release days for all ELD 1 and 2 and 3 teachers to collaborate with their same level colleagues across the site. So that's been at least once a year we've come together and continue to work together with them on the teacher orientation week in August and also during June professional development week at the end of June, at the end of the school year. We continue to support the ethnic studies LEP section for with trainings also for the teachers who within that class have all 3 levels of ELD section, students who just came last week to students who've been in the country for up to 3 years. And so we also continue to work with the ethnic studies cohort of teachers working with those sections. This year we started also we convened a working group to take inventory of resources for our math sections starting with geometry, because then we hope to work our way down to algebra and then our way up to algebra 2, algebra 1, geometry and algebra 2 to really create cohesion across the courses. Also within all of these content area classes, really develop in the use and implementation of the ELD standards for teachers to become more familiar with them and really use them to drive their instruction. And we are going to hopefully, once the science, we're going to support also science courses to modify units for biology. But we similar to the ethnic studies work, what happened with the ethnic studies that we developed first, the scope and sequence was developed first, and then from there we were able to build modifications and language supports and scaffolds for the LEP sections, and we want to do the same with the science courses once their scope and sequence established. And then we'll come in and build those accommodations and supports for those courses as well. We're almost done.
Okay, so we have some recommendations and considerations as we consider our Title III plan. And this is part of why we do this evaluation, is to take stock of where we're at and where we're hoping to go. So we want to continue the efforts with the John Gardner Center and the Stanford Sequoia Collaborative in our reclassification study to figure out how timing impacts reclassification. What happens if you reclassify as a third grader, as a fourth grader, as a seventh grader, as a ninth grader? We've seen the impact, and we can tell you that early reclassification makes a difference, but we're going to get a little bit more nuanced and study this with our professors at Stanford a little bit more to better understand it and look at all the data. We also completed presentations at all of our school sites and did training around elevation, helping people understand the acronyms and the reclassification rates. And we gave formal recognition for multilingualism as an asset, really building up our students, recognizing them for bringing more to the table and more diversity and to our school and making it richer. So we did a district-wide PD, as I said earlier, with our case managers, special ed, and EL came together. We aligned our practices and worked on our dually classified students. And we met as a cabinet met, as well as Janelle and I, with every EL team at each school site to review their programs, figure out what the needs assessment is, and ask for some proposals. We are also working on developing a summer unit for sites to use to expand credit recovery options for students in summer school in both English and Spanish. And we did share the bulletin with you around the new reclassification procedures in January, kind of documenting a process, which, like you guys were talking about earlier, what is the process? Do we have a process? Do we write it down? Where does it live? And so rather than it sitting in like somebody's memory bank because they have institutional knowledge, we decided put it in a bulletin, write it down, specify when we do reclassification, what's the process and procedures. And that was requested by the bilingual resource teachers to have that, so they have a guide and sort of a calendar to follow to allow reclassification to happen more easily 3 times a year. Long-term planning, we do want to look at some options around CTE pathways, seal of biliteracy, primary language courses, a Spanish literacy course. We have big dreams. And we have written some of these in last year, and we've been able to check off some of them, but we are really trying to think outside the box, consider our students who are eligible for AB 2121, which means that they have a, according to the state, a sort of different pathway. They're coming here to us with 16 years old, limited education, and they're going to need to graduate. And what are the graduation requirements for them? Do we have a program specifically for them to support them, or were they just right now they're just in the comprehensive high schools? We're going to look at a program over at San Mateo Union High School District called the Bridge Program that does just that. And we want to look at how these course pathways help improve A through G completion for our students that are in ELD and English support classes, as these courses currently do not count towards A through G? And how do we support students who come here already needing support or needing ELD? And how do we get them to that level of completing A through G? The Summer Bridge program for LTELs is also on the table for consideration. That is it. Thank you.
Okay. Start by seeing if there's any public comment on this agenda item.
I have 2 public comment cards.
Okay. Gary, I see your hand. We'll take a board comment after we do the public comment. So we have 2 comment cards. We'll start with those. And if anyone, the attendees, if you could raise your hand now. Okay, let's hear our 2 public comments.
Okay, first up is Abby Corman.
Good evening again. I appreciate that Title III calls our attention to our English language learners and expects us to report out our efficacy in serving them. And I appreciate that Diana and Janelle went above and beyond in providing us data in the analytics. Tonight, we heard that ELs are roughly 1,200 students, or more than 10% of our district population, and they have specific language needs to access and be successful in all of their courses. We heard tonight that a significant percentage, at least 25% of LTELs and many more newcomers, are not graduating with their 4-year cohort. While Title III funds some of our EL services, such as the BRT, which we heard, these are not the only services we provide to our EL students, and our EL students are not a monolith and require varying supports. I don't know if I'm the only one, but it would be helpful to me to hear in presentations such as these, alongside the required FPM data about our ELs, to hear about all of the services we do provide if we're seeing all of the results from the data and from our testing. Because one question that has stuck with me, I've asked quite a bit and still so far is unanswered. I'm not sure if our LTELs receive any direct services throughout the year beyond LPAC testing. While our ELD students receive specific LEP courses tailored to their needs, and ELD teachers receive some specific professional development, and we provide services to newcomer families, we do a lot in this district. I'm not trying to not say that. I appreciate all that we do. I'm not clear, though, that there's even one service only LTELs receive. Our CMPD, our bilingual liaisons, our BRTs are for all staff and all students. They're a tier 1 resource. I believe our data shows us that we have a need we're not yet serving, as do many schools across our whole country, definitely in California. And I'm hoping and asking our district to dream bigger. As we do our comprehensive MTSS work reviewing all of our services, I ask us to look into our tier 2 services for LTELs. Other recommendations I bring up are around support bilingual staff, which I've mentioned before, how our district only provides 1 bilingual parent liaison at each site, regardless of size, and we're not providing access and support to the large number of families whose language is other than English. And then I also just need to speak to the comment I heard Trustee Stevenson share earlier during the consent agenda about personnel resignations. In the past 2 years, I know of 3 ELD teachers who have resigned from our district. And I wonder about what structures we have in place to retain it, specifically our ELD teachers, because those students deserve qualified and healthy teachers who look like them.
Thank you. Next, we have Jonda Faris de Gomez.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate the time to speak. Also thankful for a long board meeting because it's helped me calm my nerves just a little bit as I waited. So thank you. But basically, to introduce myself, my name is John de Ferris de Games. I do teach here in the district. I've been here 5 years full time, but I do want to make clear that I am not speaking on behalf of any school site. These are my comments as an EL advocate and as a person trained in language acquisition. So as teachers, we are taught to make the difficult easy, to understand, to make it relevant. And so I want to take another look at how we can view the data that we just saw. Basically, to reframe it just a little bit, if you look at those years, the pandemic years were included in that, yet there was very little change. So the point is that basically the pandemic years were no worse than any other year before and after for our ELs, all right? How many subgroups can we say that? For most of the subgroups, they were worse during the pandemic years. There was no change. That's a big indictment of what's going on in our district. You know, and it's not, Joe, it's not just a 4-year streak. This is a legacy problem. We actually have people on staff in our district in different positions who were newcomer ELs who went through our district. And if you will listen to their stories, you will understand this is a legacy problem, not a 4-year problem, not a pandemic problem. I'm really here tonight to talk about the other canary in this, coal mine. And that is basically what we're seeing going on with our ELD teachers. At this moment, we have 3 sites looking for ELD teachers. That's pretty big, and it's a reoccurring problem. So basically what we're seeing between the data and also the fact, the number and our personnel, those who are leaving, is that it's not working for anybody. It's not working for teachers, and it's definitely not working for the students that they serve. Our program is broken. So, there are some amazing, amazing people here that I don't even have an hour's worth of time to talk about throughout this district who are supporting these students, but they're not enough. We have to retain the teaching staff as well. Basically, I also want to just say that it is broken, but I definitely think we need to look at an assets perspective. There are things we can do that can improve the situation. We can have newcomers earning A through G, CTEL, and college credit their very first year if we will change our vision. So I ask you to look for that vision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comments. Now we can hear any comments or questions from board members. And Carrie, I saw you put your hand up early, so I'll go to Carrie Dubois first.
Okay, thank you. So thanks for that presentation. So detailed. And I probably should have asked this in advance. When I think about the success of our kids, for me, the high school experience is not just the academics, it's the fun, it's the social. And many years ago, I think when Jim Leonidas was still in the district, he showed us some data about struggling kids, and it included, are they part of the Boys and Girls Club? Are they part of fun? Because fun, to me, helps our kids become more academic. So I should have asked this in advance. I'm not asking for exact numbers. Like I know there's the Dream Club, right? That's a club there's a lot of English learners part of that club, right? Are there other opportunities for fun, for field trips, for socialization, not just academics? Because I think that I feel so strongly about this, that when kids have music, when they have art, when they have great socialization, it makes them more academic. So can you guys tell me about the fun? And I'm going to be a stickler on this. I know I ask about it a lot. I just felt it has to mix with the academic. So there's Dream Club. What else? What else do we have?
Can I add to what Carrie is saying, if it's okay with you, Carrie?
Yeah.
I think where I know Carrie said fun and I love fun. But I think there is in my mind, and I think Bonnie, you've been trying to do this, is that when kids are connected, right? Early on, freshman year, not junior or senior year, freshman year, they do seem to get better because there's a spirit of belonging. And I know that some of the 2x2s I've been talking to were oh, okay. I thought I heard a baby. Okay. I thought it was just me. But if there's more belonging, right? And so if they're connected, and have at least, if you think about, is it me?
No.
Okay, somebody needs to mute. When you think about developmental assets of what you went through, Amy, they will say they need at least 2 connections, that they're part of sports, that there are all these different developmental assets that help students later on. And if they're connected and have positive experiences, that actually impacts their financial income, their ability to have education, their overall health. And then they're much more likely to have more success later. And so it's academic and social. And so I wanted to tag that along to what Carrie's saying. And if you do map out being connected, how does the student and the parent know that those things are just as important as the academics? So I know that's a lot packed in, and Carrie, I know I added on to what you said, but I just wanted to make sure that piece was connected.
So
Go ahead.
Bonnie, I know that when we've done the EL data dives and we look at the CUME folders and we see those pictures every year, I would, when I've met with the principals, I've like, how often do you guys look at CUME folders? Because it will definitely center you. We talk about that, and you can kind of see students as they are growing when they're connected, and then when something happens. So maybe you can just kind of talk about that process and how
Yeah.
we do that, and then
I didn't jump in to answer the question because I think Janelle Bucarini and Lily and their crew make a lot of fun things happen for kids. So I was waiting for her to hop on it. But I will go ahead and say it's kind of a hard question to answer. And on the other hand, it's a very easy question to answer. So both Carrie and Shanice are correct. A lot of the research shows that kids who are more connected to a place on frankly a deeper level than academics fare far better than their peers. And the reason it's a hard question to answer is because there's so much available to our students at large, and there are different sites doing different things at different times to connect, for instance, newcomers to those options. So 1,200 EL students in the district, it's hard to speak to them. But I will say that of those students, the ones who are plugged into a program, be it an AVID or BUILD, or kids who play a sport, those are students who typically fare better academically. Sites do things like connect leadership classes with LEP students and pair them up in kind of buddy systems. Leadership offers free tickets to come, and then a buddy to like go to a performance with you, to go to a football game. So there are definitely many efforts being made, but I am not up to date on which each individual site is doing right now. And I don't want to be dishonest in my answer to you. And I will say that we have an awful lot of EL students who are not plugged into anything. But I do, yeah. And I wanted to give Janelle an opportunity if she wanted to add to that, but she does. Yeah, there she goes. Good.
Thank you. Yeah, they're also, in addition to the, Boys and Girls Club, we saw them here earlier. There's a lot of our students who also participate in their after school activities, and they're really part of that organization and their community. Sports you've mentioned, and we've talked about also the within the sites too. There's really a lot of great teacher driven connections. I know at Sequoia, Ms. Winsall takes students camping, or they take them on, on hikes, and there's different opportunities to connect them with nature. I know at MA, there was a teacher who used to work with students to take them and bird watch and do all kinds of different outside activities. And so a lot of these are teacher driven with site funds that are supplemental activities that are going on. Lily has led community circles within the ELD classes, and there's a lot of other things that we want to do. And I think there's so much more that we want to continue to build from. I know from the conversations we'd had recently in DLAC, a lot of our parents who participate have talked about their students being in the volleyball team or being in the baseball team, the softball team. And so some of our students are connected, but one of the things that came up at in a recent meeting was like, there's not enough sports, or there's not enough spots. How do it's not fair. My kid tried out but couldn't make it onto the team. So we're working on figuring out how do we connect them to other, to community sports or to other things that are going to really be beneficial to that. And we talk a lot about the importance of after school and connecting socially with what's going on, in the activities, because oftentimes we do that a lot in DLAC and ELAC meetings, and really educate our parents around, like, it's okay to let your kids go to this activity. Because sometimes I know my mom is a newcomer family was like, nope, you can't go to that, and nope, you can't go to that. And so I think a lot of the times too, we want to really educate them around what the sort of the activities that are going on in the high school. What is, it's okay to go to the after school basketball games or a night football game. It's okay to do the prom dance. And so we really work on educating our families also around like the importance that connecting socially has also on the students.
Lily, do you want to add something? I see you. Just come to the microphone so the people in Zoom can hear you.
I just wanted to add a little bit more of the community circles that we do every beginning at each semester. We go to the ELD class, ELD 1, and we just create a sense of belonging in the class with including the teacher. And we ask kind of questions of how can they feel comfortable with each other, right? Every week we have new students. So I know it's just me and Janelle, but we just try to do it every beginning at each semester. And also another thing that we're doing that is really cool, I think, personally, we have a newcomer EL student ambassadors. So we have one school and the second school is in progress. It's a big group of students, like 20 students who just kind of want to be leaders and want to be a role model for others. So I think that's really cool. What other thing? Boys and Girls Club. And Janelle is right. This group of parents, they also want to learn to trust. They often call me and ask, is that a good program? Can I send my kid? Is it okay to come home alone in the bus at night? 7, 8 o'clock. Sports, right? They don't understand. PE, it's also very hard for them to they just follow the other students. So we're trying to create more things for them and connecting community organizations who can help us with this group of students.
Thank you for that. It's great.
I had a couple of questions kind of regarding, so do the majority of our English learners spend a significant time in an elementary school district or one of our feeder districts before they come here?
Long-term, yeah.
So 3/4 spend
About 3/4 of our EL students are long-term English learners, which means that they have been here.
So not to put you on the spot, but I am curious, like, how well do you think some of the elementary school districts do in terms of their English language programs? Because I do wonder if there's a wide variety in terms of that, or if you notice anything that certain elementary school districts have better English language learning programs than others.
I can't speak to that personally. No, I don't think we can speak to that, but I think that's part of the work that we're doing with our partner districts in terms of like talking about the reclassification and aligning procedures. Because even though each district has that local criteria that we are able to build, each of our partner districts had a different one, right? And so and when we talk about collaboration and really aligning to best practices, that's sort of the work that we're trying to push right now to center around the work for a reclassification of our long-term ELs who are coming from our feeder district.
Yeah, so I understand that. I was just curious because I'm sure the data must be there, right? Like how well do students coming from certain middle schools who are English language learners? So I guess maybe this question to follow up, but I am curious, like, is there a significant gap as to some students, some English language learners from certain elementary school districts are doing way better than others and might be something to look into?
I could certainly do some data analysis, and I think it's not just comparing English learners across districts, but maybe comparing within the district. You know, are EL students at one district doing any different than English only students from the same district, right? Does the disparity exist before they get here, right? Or is it something that's like, and I think that's the kind of conversation we would have with the Stanford Sequoia Collaborative, where we mine that data together and talk about how to share out best practices that could work. And we ground our conversations in the research around it.
I would also say that our partner districts are vastly different in their funding and in the number of EL students that they have. So if I have 10 EL students at my elementary school, most of whom have parents who are college graduates from their home countries and understand how the system works, and I'm coming here well educated in my first language, and then I arrive and I can really be focused on, because I'm not one in a mass of many. There's just a lot. I'm always heartened when we meet with our partner districts, because they all truly care about students and are eager to serve them the best that they possibly can. So while I would say that we would certainly see things if we looked at the data, if there was a district that it was just nailing it, we'd all be begging to come and tour their schools. I mean, this is an epidemic across the state where we just are having a really tough time serving a big swath of students who have been with us since kindergarten and often were born here.
Topic, do you have another question?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say the reference to like the renewing our promise to our long-term English learners by Dr. Lori Olson is a great kind of work to ground the conversation in. That's, to Bonnie's point, this is a statewide issue.
Topic, do you have more?
Not now.
Okay, Amy, you have something you want to ask? Okay, Shawnice, you want to ask something else?
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I think one of the first things a few families sat me down and talked to me about English language learners, and they were alumni of our district, have gone off to college and done many things, but they talked about their experience being an ELL student, classified student, and how difficult it was to get into the A through G track, and just some real feeling like the district just did not claim them, right? And kind of felt like it was so difficult to get to that dream that they wanted for themselves, but had other great experiences with our district. And so as a person who's not an English language learner, and I want to hold that as a real thing. And so trying to understand this, I know Janelle, I was like, the first meeting, I was like, what? And then, and trying to be an advocate with no knowledge. But when I listen to this, I am actually just very, very curious about, first of all, I'm very happy with the work that you all are doing. Like, we have a plan and we have data. And so that's really important to me when 30%, I think it's 30% of our families are Spanish speaking. And so what does that mean? And I know that there's other languages too that we don't even talk about, right? And so I'm very curious about the holistic piece of how do we support. I forgot what the blue line was, and I'm still just learning all these technical things, but they didn't change to your acknowledgement. And I see that across just with some of our families who went through COVID, like their numbers were the same before, during, and after. And the thing about it is that kids change, so that may not even be the same kids. And so I am wondering a little bit more about there's so much work doing in the community right now around immigrant families. And I'm just wondering if it's time for us to tell the community what we need from them to support our kids so that they understand. And it might be something you're already doing. So that was the first thing, because I have had people call me saying, what else do we do? Because they're providing tutoring, they're doing all these things to capture students. And then for that 10% of kiddos who are kind of like distracted from school and just doing what kids do, which is, draw attention to themselves in the community. They're wanting to do more work with those 10%, right? And sometimes I think that sometimes they're the kids who are probably in some of these populations and how we identify that. So I wonder if there's some more that we can give direction to community to say, hey, if someone says to me, how can I help you all? I think it's really important for me to know how the community can support, because that is the conversation that's happening with me. And then the last piece is when my heart is with children who learn differently and also impacted by language as well. And I just wanted to share that, like, those are the students that I wonder if, because I know if you have an IEP or a 504 plan, the Department of Rehab will pay for internships and things of that sort. Now you have to ask, but they will do those kinds of things. So I'm just wondering, like, how creative are we getting to get that small percentage? I'm so happy about the other ones who end up catching up, and we do a lot of intensive work, but I just wonder what we can do for those numbers that aren't changing very much. I know that was a lot. You can pick up whatever you want to talk about.
I'll pick up on, well, there were three things I think I got. So one, in terms of the experience of our newcomer families, I'm a product of this district. I graduated from Mount Atherton High School. My family moved here from 7th grade. When I was in 7th grade, I went to one of the feeder districts and then to MA. So I know a lot of that parent education. I think when we meet with GLAC, a lot of that, I think my mom didn't know anything. It's like, what is college and where are we going and what are you doing? And a lot of these things, I think that's the work that we really target when we meet with families. And I know Lily and I, think about like, well, we need more parent workshops. We need more, like we do the parent project, but now she's leading like a technology parent training. And last year it was just like, come to the school and we'll talk to you we'll give you information about Canvas and IC and all of these different things. And so we're working with families to be able to, so I think that also, I want to address the second piece in terms of the community and advocacy. We want to really empower our families to learn how to advocate for themselves, right? Because a lot of the times they might be frustrated with like, the grades are not improving. How do I address that? How do I reach out to the school? Who is the best person to contact? And those also are a lot of the calls that Lily gets in terms of like, this is the situation that's happening. Who do you think I should call at the school? And sometimes she'll make appointments. She'll call directly the AVP secretary and say, oh, that's the AVP that you need to talk to. That's the IVP that you need to talk to. Here's your counselor. Let's start there. And so a lot of those conversations have centered around like the advocacy, teaching advocacy for our families. Sometimes it's about sports. And so there's a whole different really topics that come in and that the Lily supports families around and connecting with their specific sites. There's one last thing you said. I'm gonna say something, I forgot. Do you want to add? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, the duly classified students. I'll let you talk about the parent.
I just want to share with you guys that this Newcomer Family Center is growing. And nonprofit organizations and people are getting to know us more. So we have more people reaching out to us that they want to collaborate. So things are getting better and better. And I'm very happy to say that because my team is amazing. Collaborating with the student support, student services also is on point. And as soon as we have the presentation ready for you guys are going to be able to see how many nonprofit organizations or community members are reaching out to us to collaborate with this group, like you said, Shanice. Very proud.
Yeah, to that point, I think I was in a conversation last week with Stanford, who was a woman who was a researcher. She said, I've talked to the legal people and I've talked to the medical community. I haven't talked to anybody in education yet. And so we had a nice conversation about our newcomer families and the needs of our students. And so that was great. And that conversation, just the very beginning of what is to come with that collaboration. They've been reaching out to all of us to talk to us. So the one thing I wanted to say was the point that Bonnie made and about parents knowing what to do to support their kids or where their kids are at, and Janelle making the point about advocacy. I think knowledge is power. And one of the really confusing things about being in high school is figuring out how to graduate and meet A through G requirements. And what we have been working for 2 years, right, Bonnie, on a college and career readiness guide that is about to launch this week. Fingers crossed. It should go out. It's going out in English, it's going out in Spanish, and it's very explicit and hopefully clear. We will be reviewing it with our parent communities around where students are at in terms of their readiness for college, and whether or not they've met where they are in terms of meeting graduation requirements. It spells it out in footprints and icons, and basically takes a transcript and makes it something manageable. And I think that particular, all families need this, not just our English learner families, but it is really, I'm hoping that this will provide some leverage for knowledge so families can advocate for their children and the children can advocate for themselves. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that's
We have a comment from Karen Van Putten.
great.
Hi, everyone. I'm just inspired because I need to echo everything that Lily Quinones and Janelle Bugarani have just been sharing. I was texting furiously to Bonnie Hansen, and she said, raise your hand. I want to emphasize the parent element, involving our parents through our ELAC, and at Woodside, really growing our ELAC involvement has been a really huge component of partnership and pride and joy. And I very deliberately call it pride and joy, because these parents have really stepped up as leaders on our campus. And because of their involvement in ELAC, they're joining and encouraging their friends and neighbors to be part of our parenting project, and where they're learning about social emotional support for their students, how to be just better parents, how to improve communication, how to support without being nagging, and then everything that Lily described in terms of how they're supporting and pushing in and supporting with how to use Canvas, how to email teachers. That partnership has just been so powerful. And then on the student end, I just want to praise the fact that we have our broadcast news that goes on every day live, and we always have an aspect of the newscast cast in Spanish, so that everyone, our large EL population, Spanish-speaking population of students are feeling definitely part of the audience, and that they're getting the news firsthand. In addition, in response to Carrie Dubois' comment about an emphasis on fun, we absolutely embrace that concept of, we have to develop that sense of belonging and fun for the kids. And we emphasize the 8 conditions for student success at Woodside. And I know we do at all of our sites, but in developing the assets for student improvement and student success, Diane Burbank, my predecessor, used to say it was all the non-academic means to student achievement. And that is that sense of belonging, feeling like they see themselves in the adults representing them on their campus. If they see more of themselves and they have a voice at the table. And then finally, the fun for a teenager is being a participant in the school dances, being a part of the homecoming activities, being part of prom in 2 days. And so a lot of it is educating our parents about the American culture without, forcing it on them, but saying, be involved. We want you to come. We want you to be part of our dances. We want you to share, what music you want at our dances. So nearly, 40% of our songs that we play at our dances Spanish, and all the kids dance to it, and it's so much fun. And we provide, if students need it, we provide reduced and free tickets to the dances, and prom is expensive. We do a princess project for our students. Take the kids to San Francisco and they can select dresses. We're working on rentals for the boys and the tuxes. And then we're chartering a bus for them to go to. And while we're talking about English learner acquisition, all of that is part of giving them a sense of belonging so that they can continue to persevere to learn the language.
All right, thank you for adding that on the school site perspective there. Shawnice, you want to make one more comment?
I do want to acknowledge that I hear your language changing. I am a language changer champion about how you guys are talking about the English language learner. I think it was one of the classes you said limited. And I do think some language can create an identity that we don't want, an oppression identity, like I can or I'm less than. And so I just want to commend you all. Like, as you continue to change your language, you change the life of a child and how they see themselves. So I just wanted to say that at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for the presentation. There's a large number of our students covered in the EL, and I appreciate the teachers who came and shared concerns and questions and all the thought and the ideas for continuous improvement of the program. So really appreciate this discussion, or I should say information item. Okay, our next is our one action item of the night, approval of a waiver request for allowance of attendance due to emergency conditions.
Yes, so if you recall, we had some adverse weather month or so ago. It seems like it's just been nonstop since January 1st. So this J13A waiver allows us to meet attendance requirements without making up days when we had to close due to power outages from inclement weather. So this is for Sequoia High School, closed on March 15th to March 16th, Menlo Atherton High School closed on March 22nd, and Carlmont High School closed on March 15th. So this is before the board for approval.
Student trustees, would you like to make a motion this evening? Don't have to.
Sure. It's motion to approve item 15.1.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Do we do a roll call vote? Okay, all in favor of approving the item, say aye.
Aye.
Carrie, I see Carrie's hand raised. So unanimously passed.
I do need signatures from all board members on this, so I'll catch you
Okay.
after.
We'll do signatures after we adjourn, which is the last item. Do I have a motion to adjourn? That's a motion from Shawnice. Second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor of adjournment? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good night, everyone. Thank you.
That was Amy.